Would you like an opinion on a financial matter you're dealing with? Whether it's about retirement, investments, taxes, or 401ks, Scott Hansen and Pat McClain would like to help you by answering your call. To join Allworth's Money Matters, call now at 833-99-WORTH. That's 833-99-WORTH.
Welcome to Allworth's Money Matters. Scott Hansen here.
Pat McClain, thanks for joining us.
Glad you are with us, both myself and my co-host. We are both financial advisors, certified financial planner, chartered financial consultant. We spend our weekdays with people like yourself, and we are broadcasting on the weekends to be your financial advisor on the air. And this program is a little different than other ones in the fact that we are still going to have our discussions that we have with one another. But we are using some of our best of calls, so we'll be having some of those within the program.
Yeah, and they are the best of. They're not just like, hey, let's just run this thing again. We actually had our team go through and listen to them, make sure they're good. So we try to cover a wide variety of topic on our best of calls.
You know, as you listen to these and you're thinking, I'd like to ask these guys a question. I think I've got something. Feel free to give us a call. We'll set up a time to record it. 833-99-WORTH is our number. Again, 833-999-6784. Get you on the program.
The questions, if you're a new listener to the show, like what kind of questions do people ask? They ask questions about their 401k, IRAs. The biggest question we have is, do I have enough money to retire?
That is the biggest question that most Americans are dealing with.
Yeah. Do I have enough money to retire?
If you have $100 million, you're probably not worried about that.
Yeah.
If you got $2 million, you might be worried about that. If you have $500,000, you're probably worried about that.
But
if you have $5 million, you might be worried about that.
The interesting thing about the question is that people actually have a tendency to look at their assets and not their outgo. And the point being is that money not going out is exactly the same as money coming in. If you don't have a mortgage payment of $2,000 a month, then you don't need $300,000 or $350,000 behind it.
It might even be more powerful because that mortgage is going to click no matter what happens. That demands feeding every month, regardless of what happens in your life. You can't change that unless you sell a house or gets repossessed. Foreclosed. Thank you.
Thank you. There's so many different ways for the lender to take back the property. Sometimes it's hard to remember. Truly. Yeah. Right? Truly. So the question we get is, do I have enough money to retire? And you'll hear us ask the question, what do you have? Where does it come from? How old are you? Are you married? And who do you owe money and how much?
Yeah.
And that's the biggest question, which is, it's much easier to pay down debt and get rid of expenses oftentimes than it is to invest.
Yep. There's no question. So anyway, let's go to some of these calls. They're some of our best calls we've got. We're talking with Daryl. Daryl, you're with Allworth's Money Matters.
Hey, good afternoon, gentlemen. Scott and Pat, thank you all for taking my call.
Yes.
I wish I had 30 minutes to talk to you and just suck your brains. Let me tell you a quick intro of
Thanks.
That
sounds really exciting.
Yeah, I'm very high risk when it comes to investing, and I hope and pray that the kids are high risk. We have 5 children, which are grown now, the youngest being 27 years old. I grew up in the projects, very low-income area. I'm not a college graduate or anything, but what I did when I graduated, I went right into the military, the Marine Corps, the very next day. And I retired, did my 20 there. And then I came out and went to the Postal Service, and I'm at over 20 there.
God bless you.
So I think I'm putting all my beings right there with the government, basically. So, but my question is pertaining to our grandchildren. We have 6 of them, and I'm interested in what are some of the investment programs that myself and my wife, can do for them. If you have any advice or insight on that
what are you trying to accomplish?
My goal is for them when they're 25 years old or 30 is to have a lot amount of money set aside for if they decide to go to school or open a business of that nature. So that's growth income.
And when you say, is it primarily school or is it or is it business? And at any point in time, would you like the ability to retrieve those dollars if you think that they were going to use them in a manner that isn't consistent with your beliefs?
Yes.
Okay.
So we can talk about some different avenues that you can use, and then the pros and cons to that, right? One avenue is use what's called 529 plans. These are designed for education costs. The benefit of a 529 plan, inside of a 529 plan, you could be as aggressive or as conservative as you'd like. You control the dollars.
You set the allocation.
And you can set up 6 accounts for your 6 grandkids. You can have them be as aggressive as you'd like. You can control it. The beauty of these plans is the dollars grow tax deferred, and when the money comes out and it's used for education expenses, room and boards included, trade schools are included, it comes out tax free. So all the earnings are tax free. And
the benefit is you remain the owner of the account, not the child. So if the child gets to 25, 22, 23, and you're like, giving this kid 15 or 20 grand is not going to help them their lives. It will actually possibly make their lives worse. You can change the beneficiary on that account to another grandchild, or you could withdraw the money yourself and pay taxes and penalties on there. So that is one option. It is the option that I have chosen for my own children. It is the option that Scott has chosen it is the option that we recommend to about 95% of all our clients.
Now, here's a couple other avenues you can go. You can set up accounts that are what's called a Uniform Transfer to Minors Act or Uniform Gift to Minors Act. It's different states call it different things, but an UTMA or an UGMA.
Which, by the way, was the predominant way of funding college education prior to the advent of the 529
20
plan.
years ago or whatever.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. With this, there's some benefits. This is a way that the money is set up in the kid's name, so you die or whatever, it remains in the kid's name. You'd have to set up 6 different accounts for each grandchild. A certain amount of interest, $750 a year or $800 a year, I forget the exact number, is free from any sort of income tax. And then it's taxed after that, and if it gets too high, it's taxed at the parents' rates. But that applies to such a small percentage of the population; it's almost irrelevant in this particular situation. The challenge with that sort of structure, and again, you can invest it in anything you want. You could invest it in a bank account, or you can invest it in Tesla stock, and anywhere in between. The downside to that is when the child reaches age of maturity. Mm-hmm. Those dollars are theirs regardless. So if they're more interested in cars than they are in college catalogs, they're probably going to take the money and buy a car or something like that.
And I remember when I was 20, a friend of mine all of a sudden shows up with a Carmen Ghia, right back in the day. Volkswagen Carmen Ghia. For those young kids, you won't know what a Carmen Ghia is. But a Carmen Ghia, and this kid had nothing. And I'm like, where did you get this Carmen Ghia? He goes, well, I had this fund my parents had been saving for me. And
I turned 21, here it is.
And I got it. And he wrecked it 3 weeks later. I thought that was classic.
He did. So that's another avenue. And a third avenue is where you set up it's kind of a pain, but you set up 6 different accounts in your name or you and your wife's name or your trust name or however you hold your assets. And you just earmark them internally that I'm setting this up for Johnny, and no kid's named Johnny anymore, whatever.
Kyle.
Whatever their names are.
Devin.
And then you earmark them yourself. You're the one going to be responsible for any sort of capital gains or dividends or interest that are paid out over there. Presumably, you would invest in something that's more growth oriented, so it wouldn't be very spend off much. And then you could gift those assets to the child later. Like, hey, by the way, I'd been saving up money. There's 10 grand that's in this account that I've got for you. And you could set up in your will or your trust such that if you die early, these dollars go into a certain trust to accomplish your objectives.
All right. So we gave you all the choices, and the pros and cons. You want to use the 529 plan. That's all you want to do. And what state are you in?
I am in Missouri. And real quick, my son, he has 3 of the grandkids out in California. Mm-hmm. So I told him to go ahead and start teaching them about stocks and buying. So he set up accounts in TD Ameritrade, and I told them to start teaching them right now.
That's right.
Of course, young people and kids' minds is all about gaming and techs and things of that nature. But I thought that would be a good idea for them to start.
Yep. And so what you want to do is just set these up. I don't know about the 529s are funny because each state is only allowed to have one. And so, but you don't.
Some states give you a tax deduction. Some states don't.
And you don't have to use the one that the state that you're actually resident.
I'd look to see if you get some tax deduction for the state of Missouri.
And if not, I'd use the state of Utah's plan, which is the one that.
Oh, okay. Utah. And I know Kansas definitely has that. Over there.
Well, they all have them. The question you want to see is if you get a deduction in the state of Missouri.
And then if the money's not used for any sort of education expenses whatsoever, worst case, you pay taxes and a 10% penalty on the gain.
And it comes back to you. But you can always rename another
That's right.
grandchild as a beneficiary.
One kid doesn't turn out so well, and you're like, that's not going to help him.
Yeah. So anyway, we appreciate your service in the Marine Corps and the U.S. Postal Service.
Thanks, Daryl. Appreciate the call. We wish you well. Now we're going to talk and hear from Mick. Mick, you're with Allworth's Money Matters.
Hi. Thank you very much for taking my call. I've been on your show before, maybe 7 or 10 years ago. But this time, I think I've reached the end of my rope, and I don't think I'm qualified anymore to do the taxes for my family or prepare for retirement. My wife and I are 64. She's an entrepreneur. She started 3 companies here in Davis, California.
Oh, I remember you.
Do you really?
Okay,
Yeah. And your company just got a new CEO.
Right. That's exactly correct. Yes.
Yep. I absolutely remember you. And the last time you called, it's because you had a heavy concentration of this biotech stock.
That's what I emailed in for. Yes, exactly right. So this is her company.
By the way, listen, congrats to your wife. She is absolutely brilliant. You guys have obviously, some people are going to connect the dots. This company had a CFO that was cooking the books, and it's a publicly traded company, and it cratered. I mean, it was on the edge after that CFO was cooking the book. So what he was doing is he was actually booking sales without actually doing the sales. Short story.
It wasn't the CFO. It was a COO. I don't want to give the CFO a bad reputation.
Oh, thank you. Okay,
all right. Defamation.
I got half the story right. But listen, you're
and the COO's trial. He's supposed to be getting his sentence pretty soon.
Oh, good. And by the way,
so many times. So.
What a great. By the way, much admiration for your wife and the company you have built in the space you're building, and what the new products that you're coming out with right now are just absolutely amazing.
And for the rest of us, we have no idea what you're talking about. But anyway, how can we?
What's your question?
Because I have zero recollection of this conversation. But
well, she's an entomologist, and she creates green products to grow crops.
Got it.
And this is her third company that she did that with.
And so, what's your question?
We've reached the point now. Well, she's become retired, and now she has RSUs, and she's got all these alphabet soup stuff that I don't understand. And one of the biggest ones is that when she first went public, the different people told her that she had qualified small business stock that she could get a lower capital gains rates for.
Correct.
And I'm looking all over the place online, trying to figure out retirement strategy and charitable contribution strategy and stuff like that on which shares of stock do we actually sell and use to live on maybe or to diversify. The big thing is to diversify.
That's right.
This way huge percentage of her stock in our portfolio. And which ones do we just hold on to and maybe nieces and nephews will get when we die?
So
which ones do we just commit to charity and say, here, let's put it in one of those.
You're not going to you're not going to get the answer on the air, but
there's a lot of moving parts here.
So each one of those lives in its own tax world. Each one of those segments lives in its own tax world. So we have quite a bit of experience working with these qualified small business stocks. So what you do, the process you go through is you put it on a spreadsheet and you look at the tax implications of each one of those. So some of them are great for charities. Some are great for inheritance. Some you want to gift today, not in an inheritance. And some of them you're going to liquidate based on your tax rate and how they're treated.
Right.
But you're not, you have to go through the process because you look at them as all the same stock, and they're not all the same stock. There are many flavors of those stocks. So you're not going to get the answer from me today because of the process that you have to go through. But
But if you see a good financial advisor, particularly one that has a tax firm within it, then you get the team could work together.
And it's not hard. I mean, it isn't hard. It just takes a little bit of work for you telling us the history and how they're actually titled. And
I called like 6 different companies, and 3 of them told me they think that the Trump tax cuts supersede this, so this doesn't exist anymore, which kind of made me a little depressed. The QSBS. And then others said, "Well, I heard about that somewhere and have to research."
Well, look, that's none of those are answers, right? None of those.
Right.
That's just that's just someone.
Like reaction.
Yeah, it's someone just they're speculating.
Which is what we could do on the air.
I could do that if you want.
Right.
I could tell you what I think, but the reality is, I don't have enough information from you to actually give you an answer. So.
You would be,
but this is a great opportunity.
Yeah, and
I think I need to use a pro for the first time in my life.
I think you do.
You
know, it's interesting.
TurboTax and Google just isn't enough anymore.
Look, you're on a different level here. There is nothing TurboTax or Google's going to answer for you. Nothing.
Okay.
It's going to give you something, but you're going to have to actually. Put it in a spreadsheet and actually look. Part of a co-CEO of a firm that manages almost $11 billion. I understand it. You know who manages my money? My own firm, not me.
Oh, your own firm. Okay.
Oh, I was going to say, we're going to learn something new.
No, my own firm, right? My wife's an accountant. Okay. You know who does our taxes? An accountant, not my wife. No, not her.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And you're in that situation. Yeah. You're not in the minor leagues anymore, Mark. You are not in the minor leagues. You have to actually do an analysis on this. And you're going to pay someone for their advice.
Yep. It'll be money well spent.
Just accumulating our retirement over many years.
Vanguard did a study. Morningstar did a study. Both showed that good quality advice will pay for itself. It won't cost. And particularly the more complex, you get quality advice will more than pay for itself.
Anyway, so I'm so glad you called. I remember the last call. I track your wife's success, and it's darn impressive. It's really, I'd actually like to meet her someday because she sounds brilliant. And you sound like a nice enough guy, too.
So call us in another 6 or 7 years, Mick. That was.
I called you Mark. Mick. Okay, thanks, Mick.
Okay.
Yeah, appreciate it. Let's talk now with Lynn in Illinois. Lynn, you're with Allworth Money Matters.
Yes, gentlemen. Thank you for taking my call. You're scaring me with this trillions in debt stuff, but
I'm not making it up. Yeah, we see it all.
I'm 66 years old, about to retire. I have a 457 plan, and I also have a regular IRA from another former employer. And I would like to consolidate them and kind of wondering what should I consider and which one to roll my money into.
Where's your IRA today?
It is with Vanguard.
Are you confident in your ability to both select investments as well as manage this throughout?
I don't know that I am. I would probably go with just a date-targeted plan. I don't know, like a 2030 or something, and just let them.
And how much is in your 457?
I don't really need the money to live on. My 457's got about 180,000 in it.
And how about your IRA?
The IRA's only got like 30,000 in it.
And you've got a pension coming in, so you don't need these dollars for retirement income.
Correct.
And you're 66, so at age 72, you're going to have to start taking required minimum distributions unless it gets pushed out a couple more years.
And how much will your pension be?
It will be about $38,000 a year.
And will you be eligible for Social Security as well?
I will be.
And I assume you have no debt.
No debt.
Okay. So I would consolidate the dollars out of the 457 and into the IRA. So I assume that you either work for a state or a municipality.
Yes.
Okay. And so what happens is technically, and you're in the state of Illinois, so technically that 457 is an asset of that municipality. Now, I say technically, there's only been one instance that I'm aware of where they've actually, if the municipality.
But Illinois is their finances in such good.
Well, that's why I said you live in the state of Illinois, because
we're in California,
no,
so
we can pick on
here.
we can actually pick on guys like New Jersey and Illinois, but no one else. So I would move it over to the Vanguard fund, and I wouldn't use a target date. I actually wouldn't. I would probably get a little bit more aggressive with this, and I would actually probably go. Depending upon
you could be much more aggressive in this.
Much more aggressive. Much more aggressive. I would go
depending on your comfort zone, because your time horizon is very long. You just said you don't need the dollars.
Yes.
Yeah. So I would probably go 70 to 80% equities.
Are you married?
I am.
And how old's your spouse?
She's 63.
What do you think these dollars will be used for?
I don't know. I guess we're so blessed. We haven't given it a whole ton of thought.
So I would go 70 to 80% equities in this, and the rest some cash, bonds. And
well, you could certainly do that, because you can consider the rest of your income as fixed income secure.
Bond. Yeah. And then what I would do is I'd go through the calculation every year between now, the date of your retirement, and age 72, and look to see whether you should do Roth conversions on that. And part of that driver will be your marginal tax rate versus the people that you name as the primary beneficiary on your IRA's marginal tax rate. If they're the same or yours is higher, you may not actually want to convert. But that's what I would look at, and I wouldn't use a target date on this.
No.
In fact, okay. I would actually pay someone to actually allocate it for you.
Yep. And well, of course you would believe that. That's what you do for a living.
Well, we typically manage someone's whole portfolios, and we can do it on a one-off on an hourly basis or by a project, or we manage the monies.
You get a good advisor. Studies have shown that a good financial advisor, and we're not trying to pitch on our services because there's lots of good advisors, but a good financial advisor will earn much more than what you pay for in a typical fee.
Well, and part of that is the Roth conversion, which you didn't ask about at all. Which is what I would actually concentrate. If you were sitting in...
It's all the financial planning aspects that go around with it. Plus the behavioral finance.
Yeah. But you can most certainly... That's why I wouldn't use a target date. You need to be more aggressive than what a target date would allow you to do. I would go 70 to 80% equities and not worry about it. And if you want to pay someone to manage it. Don't let them sell you an index annuity or any of this garbage. Let
me ask you this question. What percentage of your portfolio is in stocks today?
A fairly high percent. We have, we're heavy in real estate, personal real estate. We have a second home, and we have an E-Trade account with about $130,000 in it. Percentage-wise, between the IRA and all of that combined, we have we're probably at about 70%.
Right. Well, to Pat's, then don't change that.
Don't change it. I just would put everything in an IRA, and I'd actually move the money from E-Trade. I'd get it all at the same custodian, just so it makes your life easier. There's no reason to have some money at E-Trade and some money at Vanguard. You know,
one or the other.
It's I don't go to one store for milk and the other store for eggs.
Your wife probably does. My wife goes to Trader Joe's.
That's where my wife
Rayleigh's
goes.
and Nugget. There it is. Those three. 3 stores. And Target sometimes for some. And Costco. 5.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. But thank you. So what was your question?
Vanguard may charge less of a fee than the 457 I'm with.
Oh, look, the difference. It's pennies. If it's anything at all, it's pennies, and they might charge a little bit more on something and less on something else. But the 457 and the Vanguard internal cost.
Well, if fees are almost nothing at Vanguard. But the question is not really the asset management fee as much as the overall financial planning and investment advice fee around this, where if you had you had an advisor kind of overseeing the entire thing, looking at the real estate, looking at the E-Trade. When do we do some Roth conversion? Do we have to? Are there some things to consider about taxation when it comes to real estate? When do you start Social Security? When does your spouse start Social Security? All of those things. And I mean, I understand Vanguard has like a call center with a bunch of certified financial planners. I don't know if I can't vouch for whether they do a great job or not. I don't know enough about them. I like Vanguard for their index funds. We use them quite a bit at Allworth, but we don't use their. I have no idea how their financial.
Anyway, appreciate the call. Congratulations
Thank
on the retirement.
You guys so much.
Yeah, congrats on retirement. It's always. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll continue on with some discussion as well as hearing some more calls. So this is Allworth's Money Matters with Scott Hansen and Pat McLean.
Can't get enough of Allworth's Money Matters? Visit allworthfinancial.com/radio to listen to the Money Matters podcast.
Welcome back to Allworth's Money Matters. I'm Scott Hansen.
I'm Pat McLean.
I tell you what, I was yesterday I was driving, I don't know, a couple of days ago driving, and I hear an ad from someone I respect actually quite a bit, but he was hired from reading a mortgage ad on tapping the equity out of your house. Home prices have increased dramatically. Odds are you've got a lot more equity in the house. It's a good opportunity for you to take those dollars and use them for something else. And every time I hear that kind of advertisement, I cringe because you're not unleashing any equity. You're not tapping the equity. You are pledging your home as collateral for money to spend on other purposes.
Right. Yeah, like this thing is it's a well that's never going to run dry.
You got to put it back.
Yes.
They require it to be returned plus interest. And if you don't, they take your house.
You get a little, you can always tell when Scott Hansen gets a little mad because
I do get angry.
His upper lip starts getting tight.
You know why? It's one thing about selling someone a car they can't afford, selling them furniture they can't afford, a ticket to Hawaii they can't really afford.
Taking someone's house?
Look what happened years ago in the last downturn.
Yeah.
And people coming into this now, this housing market's not going to continue like it's continuing.
No.
Obviously.
It's actually crazy.
I'm not sure if it's going to fall off like it did. I don't think it will like it did before. But
part of it is supply chain.
But how in the world are you going to retire if your mortgage on your house that you bought for $200,000 is now, the mortgage is now $800,000 or whatever?
You're not.
Anyway, so we're taking some best of calls during this program, and so I'm glad you are listening. And let's talk now with Brad. Brad, you're with Allworth's Money Matters.
Hi, thanks for taking the call.
Yeah.
Hey, so my wife and I are looking into downsizing, kind of as we move into retirement. And
how old are you, Brad?
Coming up is I'm 59 and my wife's 62.
Okay.
And as we've been looking into the downsizing, one of the interesting things that came up that I wanted to ask about was not something I'd heard about a lot, but it's purchasing a home with a reverse mortgage and exploring that option as a means for controlling cash flow. Now, I've come to find out that since I'm 59, I don't qualify.
That's correct.
But I'm still interested in the concept, and maybe down the road, or just your guys' thoughts on reverse mortgages.
Also, if it was in your wife's name, but not that necessarily I could recommend that, but it's something you could do.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to do that either.
You don't want to do that. So let's talk about the rest of your financial situation before.
First of all, let's explain how these work, because I would imagine most of us that are being participants in the program today don't quite understand what Brad's talking about here.
Good idea, Scott.
Think of a reverse mortgage as a traditional type of mortgage, with the difference is there are no interest payments required. Interest still accrues, but there are no payments required. So let's say that you have a reverse mortgage on your house of $100,000, and the interest rate is 4% on it. I'm just throwing a number out. At the end of the first year, the mortgage balance would be $104,000. At the end of the second year, it'd be $108,000 and some change. At the end of the third year, it would continue to compound upon itself and grow larger and larger and larger. But one would expect that over a long period of time, home prices will continue to increase in value. So whatever equity you have in the house, odds are you would still have equity down the road. And if something happens and you don't have equity, maybe you move out when home prices are down or whatnot. They're 90+% of them are insured by the federal government to make the lender whole, so you're not responsible for it. And what some people can do is...
And Scott, may I add that?
Yep.
So what determines the amount that you can borrow is the age and the value of the home. So the younger you are, you have to be 62 to qualify. The younger you are, the less money they will lend you because they're doing a calculation as to break even. The bank doesn't ever want to lose money on this. The investors don't want to lose money on this. So if you're 62, let's say you can borrow 50% loan to value. And if you're 82, you could probably borrow 85% loan to value. The older you are, the more equity that you can borrow against in the house.
And you can use them. Let's say that you're going to buy a house at $400,000 and the loan to value, let's say, is 50%. You put down half, the reverse mortgage pays the other half. Now you are guaranteed to live into this house until your dying day and never have to make a mortgage payment. All you have to do is make sure you keep up on your property taxes and maintenance on the house.
So what's the downside to it? Right? The downside is you better be pretty darn sure that it's the last house you're going to live in.
Yeah. It's more expensive than a traditional mortgage.
And it's more expensive than a traditional mortgage. So let's talk about the rest of your financial situation. So how much money do you have in equity in your home today?
Around $420,000.
And what other assets do you have?
Other than like 401ks and money, that kind of stuff, IRAs. About $620,000 in IRA and a little bit in the 401k.
And do you or your spouse, do you expect to receive a pension?
No.
So the value of your home is how much today? You said you have $420 in equity. What's the value of the home?
Yeah, the value is around $620.
And what would if downsizing, what would that house cost you?
A new house, we're finding anywhere from $550 to $650 is a comfortable home.
So you're not downsizing value. You're just changing the
square footage, pretty much. Yeah.
So a nicer home, but smaller, nicer home.
Yes.
Or more desirable neighborhood, or something along those lines.
More, kind of like that. The neighborhood we're in right now is pretty nice. It's just the house.
And at what age do you plan on retiring?
Right at 67 for myself. My wife is pretty much retired right now.
And does she have a pension?
No.
All right, so it's basically, is she drawing from her retirement account or just your salary?
Yeah, it's just my salary. We're not drawing right now and don't want to draw.
And what's the family income now?
I'm a freelancer, so it varies every year, but it will,
on average.
If we take COVID out of the equation, it's going to be somewhere between 75 to 100.
I think it's wise that you're looking at this option, but number one, you don't need it now.
I wouldn't do it.
Right.
It makes sense. The older you are, the more attractive this technique can be to help increase a family's cash flow.
But I wouldn't do it out of the box.
Particularly while you're still working.
If I wanted to make the move to downsize right now, I would downsize right now, keep everything else remaining equal, take a new 30-year mortgage on that, and then decide you've got 8 years until you retire. Lots can happen between now and then. But I wouldn't be on, I'm glad that it's on your consideration list, but I wouldn't recommend it for you.
Not yet.
Okay.
And by the way, full disclosure, at one point in time, Scott and I started and then sold the largest reverse mortgage company.
We didn't start the largest.
We didn't start it.
It became that way.
We started it from scratch. And by the way, it wasn't targeted towards our wealth management clients. It was targeted to a whole nother section of the economy, which is the largest asset that a lot of people have is in their homes.
The average buyer was a 78-year-old widow who didn't want to leave her neighborhood. Yeah. She had already lost her husband, lost her work environment, right? So Most people do not want to leave their house as they age, and it enabled them to pay off their existing mortgage and have additional cash flow.
And so it's not either good or bad. It's either the appropriate tool or the inappropriate tool. And for you right now, it's not the appropriate tool. So I wouldn't wait till I retired. If I was going to downsize, I'd do it now. I'd get a new 30-year mortgage on it. I'd put as much cash down as I possibly could, and I'd work as long as I could.
Yep.
Okay. You said 30-year mortgage. It's kind of surprising
30-year.
There.
Well, here's why. You're never going to pay this mortgage off in your lifetime.
Right.
Right?
Unless you say I'm going to work hard to get it paid off by the time I retire.
And what's the point in that? So if you can't get the house paid off by the time you retire, if it's not in the short-term goals that you can effectively pay this mortgage off by the time you retire, then take out the longest mortgage if they had a 50-year mortgage. It's that much closer to a reverse mortgage.
That's right.
Right?
That's true.
It's the same thing.
Well, great. I appreciate it.
All right. Glad to talk to you, Brad. Wish you well.
Which is, he's right, because we preach paying your house off before you retire, but not at the sake of...
well, his wife is retired.
But he's not, and he's still got $70,000 to $100,000 a year in income.
Yeah, and he needs to continue to save, so he's got enough money when he quits working to make the family
And at that point in time,
budget.
You could decide to rather convert the forward mortgage into a reverse mortgage.
If he said my income's probably going to be quite a bit higher the next several years, but it sounds like it's because it's variable. I would rather see him at a lower monthly payment.
Yes.
We're talking with Stephanie. Stephanie, you're with Allworth Money Matters.
I am calling because my mom and I actually want to know what we should do with an inheritance that is coming her way. It's going to go into her trust, and then what do we do from there?
And how old is your mother?
She is 86.
And how large is the inheritance?
We were told it's going to be $647,000.
And does your mother owe anyone any money?
Thankfully, no.
And what's your mother's financial situation look like now? Does she own a home? Does she have money in the bank or IRAs?
Yes. Yes. No home. She used to have a home, and then we moved her up here to be Ruth actually in an apartment. And,
you know what, Stephanie? Your cell is just in a bad cell spot or something.
Oh dear! I'm sorry.
No, it sounds better right there.
Okay, I won't move.
Don't move around.
Left hand up.
So 647. How much money does she have in the bank?
She has total between CDs and a little bit in Vanguard and all of that, about $790.
And
so she doesn't need these dollars. These dollars will not be spent by her in her lifetime.
Not unless there's something really crazy that happens, because she also has long-term care policy. So.
And is she did you say she's in a rental, or that she lives with you? What did you say?
Yes, we're all together in a rental apartment, a nice apartment.
Oh. And do you have any siblings?
I don't. I am the only child.
Who'd she inherit these dollars from?
This is from a first cousin, a senior citizen who had passed away. I know. And had no other family left. I mean, she's it, and then me.
What's your mom want to do?
Well, that's why she wanted me to call you, but she said, well, we should take a vacation. So that's one thing.
Wonderful. That's a fantastic.
Do that.
I don't know how far you can go with COVID, but you can go down to the...
Okay, so take a vacation. What else does your mother want to do?
To Tahoe. We'll go to Tahoe.
Okay, great.
I'm not sure, because she, we don't get too much out beyond. She's still active to a certain degree, and she's still pretty healthy, and her mom lived to an old age. So I'm hoping, she has a long time, but she's not sure because it's such a big number to her. We just can't quite comprehend. But she did say to me, I hope that with everything now, that there will be something left for your retirement. So that's something she did say to me.
So you're living with her in a rented apartment?
Yes, we're all together.
And
that's
when you
correct.
say we, who is we?
My mom and I do have a husband.
Okay.
At least for now.
Okay. Well, no, that's real. No, let me tell you something. That's real. That is real.
Yeah, I have to say that. So. Yeah.
Oh no, that's real. Why don't you guys consider buying a house?
Well, that's what I was wondering.
A condo
even
or
though it's so
townhouse or-
expensive.
Well,
What is
even
it?
though
compared
it's
to
so
what?
expensive out here.
What?
How much is rent?
Well, it's about, with the utilities and all, it's about $2,000 a month.
Why don't you look at a little condo where you can live there after your mother passes, and that you could be
Okay,
comfortable
so
living
something-
with her there, and put it in your mother's name, and
Keep it in her name.
and keep it in her name, and then have your mother do a trust for all of her assets so that when she passes, it goes directly to you. Remember, inherited money is not community property money. It means you inherit it, not you and your spouse. And as long as you keep it separate,
Correct.
it will keep it separate
Yes.
property. And that's why, whether you were joking or not about for now, married for now, it's always
I think
separate
like getting
property.
to finding a condo or a townhouse would be ideal. And
Okay.
because so the dollar's $650,000. We do what with it? We stick it in the bank.
And
we
then
stick it.
But then there's another $790 on top of that.
Your mother's never going to spend these dollars.
Right, and she has long-term care
Exactly.
insurance. So,
She does.
and presumably you do not own a house anywhere.
Correct.
Okay, yeah, go buy a house where you can take care of your mother until her dying day, and then you can live there and
And you've got long-term care insurance plus those assets. So even if you, at a point you said we need caregivers coming and going 24/7,
You're still fine.
You can afford that.
Yeah, that's
We're
what I
still
would
going to
do.
be okay.
Yeah, that's what I'd go
Okay,
with
and so
it.
even if my plans for the future, let's say in 15 years, is to live out of state, still okay to buy the house now
That's
because
right.
you're going to see the money back
15
eventually.
years.
Yeah, it's a long time, and your plans will change.
There's
in
never been a
15 years.
15-year time when property values haven't increased in California.
And your plans will
great.
change in the next 15 years. So that's the recommendation I would give you, and any one of the advisors at Allworth would give you.
Awesome. I so appreciate it. Thank you so much,
All right.
you guys.
Thanks for
All right.
taking care of your mom.
Yeah, for sure.
That's awfully nice.
Thank you. It's a blessing to me and to her, I know.
Oh, that's
Thank
nice.
you.
Yeah, and why she's still got the health to be able to do some traveling and stuff. Make the most of it, because actually, regardless of your age, make the most of your days, because
Who knows?
we never know. And let's talk with Mary. Mary, you're with Allworth's Money Matters. Hello.
Hello, Scott and Pat. Thank you for taking my call.
Yeah, thank you.
I am calling today. I have a question, and I'm looking for different options and the best way to handle it. So I met with my nephew and his wife over the holidays, and they were just telling me about their situation. They're both self-employed, and they just purchased a house in October 2018 for $85,000 at a 6.75% interest rate. And it's a 30-year fixed mortgage. They went in March to see about refinancing, and there was a $4,000 closing cost. Because they're self-employed, they didn't have that cash, so they didn't approve the refinancing. So they saved up the $4,000 and went back in November, and the interest rates are down to 2.8%. So they wanted to refinance an $80,000 loan, and they had the $4,000 closing. Well, at that time, the bank that they went to denied it because of things that were happening with COVID, and they just didn't approve it. So I was looking for a way that I might be able to help him.
Okay.
And different options. So I have about $40,000 cash. I have investments and retirement, pension, that kind of thing. So they would like to refinance at like 15 years. They could probably get it for less than 3% if the bank approved it, and for $80,000. And they would be paying the same amount, but they would cut their years from 30 to 15. Yeah, the problem is they haven't been able to get the loan. I don't know if they should keep shopping around, or I'm not liking the idea of co-signing a loan for them.
Yeah. Let me ask you,
What state is this in?
This is in New York State.
and what's the value of the home?
It's about 80. Well, they bought it for $85,000. It's not a lot more than that, probably.
It's amazing they could get a banker to talk to them at all for an $85,000 loan.
I think they.
It's
just
amazing
went
that
to
there's
one
actually
bank.
homes in the United States that sell for $85,000.
Well, I assume it's probably in upstate New York somewhere.
It is. It's in an older community.
Yeah, it's small.
And they're kind of newlyweds. They've been married since October 2018, and they just started their family. So.
And what's their business? They're self-employed. Are they both in the same business or two different businesses?
Yeah, he is a photographer, and his wife is a wedding planner. So with COVID, that went down.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, they have certainly been able to keep up their payments and save enough money for a down payment or for a closing cost.
So Mary, if you called and you said, I've got $300,000 in the bank, I've got another $2 million in my retirement account, I really love my nephew, then I'd say, yeah, you could be the bank on it.
That's right, Scott. I was thinking exactly.
You could be the bank on it. And
that's what I'd like to do so they don't have to have that $4,000.
Well, I just said if you had a few $100,000 in the bank and $1 million in your retirement account. So,
and by the way, full disclosure, my wife and I bought our first house. My grandmother lent us $20,000 for the down payment so we could get through PMI, payment mortgage insurance, so we didn't have to pay it. And I paid it off in a couple of years. And
my dad loaned me money to help with the down payment.
My grandmother tried to lend me money again because it was such a good return to her. She kept saying, Patrick, I could lend you some more money. And I'm like, I don't need it.
She liked the return.
She liked the return.
And my nephew also said, well, if you are going to be the financer, that we wouldn't want you to do it if you didn't get some kind of a percent. So he would be willing to even give me a little bit of a percentage, which is much more than I'm getting in the bank.
Oh, no, you'd market it above market. You'd market at fair market, absolutely fair market. But the question is do you have the financial wherewithal without putting your retirement into jeopardy to do so? So tell us about you.
Yes. Okay. Well, right now I've got about $40,000 liquid cash in the bank. I've been working for many years. I'm in my 60s, early 60s. Good retirement pensions.
Are you retired now?
No, I'm not retired. I work full time. My home is paid for. I have no debt.
Do you work for the state or a municipality or utility?
No, I do not work for the state. I work in private industry.
Okay.
And what do you have? Do you have money in a 401k or IRA, that sort of thing?
Sure. Yes, I do.
How much?
401k. I also have a pension plan with my current employer, who I've been with for over 20 years. And my employer before that was the state, and I worked with them for about 15 years. So I have.
Well, and so what if you were to add up all your retirement accounts together, what do you have in those accounts?
Oh, that I'm not prepared to tell you because I didn't check. I'm not real good at
few $100,000.
Oh yeah.
So we don't. So the answer is without that being answered, we can't tell you. My first blush is that you're not prepared to do
it. The challenge is this is your nephew, right? So let's envision down the road. Let's say you do this. Let's say that something happens. The marriage no longer works out.
That's right.
For whatever, maybe whatever, right? Something. Just life happens. Right? Marriage doesn't work out. Businesses don't work out.
Are you prepared to lose?
They quit.
This?
They're not making the payments anymore.
You don't want a house in upstate New York.
Like Aunt Mary, we can't afford the payment this month. We can only send you $100, right? And the next thing you know, they're several months behind on their mortgage, and you're like, "Well, how do I evict my nephew?"
You don't.
Then you'd be the bad aunt.
You don't. And remember, bread that is eaten is soon forgotten. Bread that is eaten is soon forgotten.
So the reality is this: at some point in time, we're going to learn how to live with COVID-19, whether that's vaccine takes care of the problem or it's just the way things are going to go forward. And we'll figure out how to live through this. There will be events and weddings again. There will be photography. Right? One's a photographer, one's a
wedding planner.
Oh my gosh.
Wedding planner.
But the reality, this 6.75% sounds high. But this is commensurate with the risk that the lender is willing to actually take. And that's why this is such a premium over a normal interest rate, because either they have poor work history, poor credit, combination of the two, and a cash flow that is not consistent. I wouldn't touch this.
The reality is, look, they're young.
They'll be
figure
fine.
this out.
They'll be fine. They'll be
It's
fine.
not. They're gonna. No, seriously, they'll figure it out. It's not the end of the world.
It's $85,000.
And the difference is 4% on 85. It's less than $4,000 a year. They would like to save that by getting a new mortgage. Save them about a little under $4,000 a year.
That's right.
A new mortgage will save them $4,000.
That's
a year.
right. That's right. And if you feel that bad,
if it takes them another year, give them $4,000 if you feel that bad.
If you feel that bad, but the reality is, unless you had oodles of money laying around, which you don't know.
Well, you probably don't have a couple $1,000,000, and I wouldn't do this unless you had a couple $1,000,000.
That's right.
And being prepared to not see these dollars.
Yeah, you would if you lent them this money, you'd be
better off just giving them some cash to help them through this.
Yeah,
if that's what you wanted. If that's what you wanted to do.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
That would be better. That would be more helpful to them than trying to pay this thing off.
Yeah, and they're
taking being the bank.
The reason they're charging this $4,000 closing cost, which is a 5% closing cost, which is relatively high, is because they're building that into the price of the loan, the risk that is commensurate with this type of loan, with this type of income, with this type of profession. You didn't create their lives. You're just a participant in it. You didn't do this to them, right? And you're a great aunt. I wish you were my aunt.
And it's not like they're in dire need.
They're fine,
right? If they were in dire need, then you'd probably just like, all right, I'm gonna. But the reality is, if you do this, there's a good chance that it will cost you not only financially but relationally.
That would be my concern as well.
That's right.
So, I wouldn't want them to feel like they couldn't talk to me because they owe me money.
So if you talk to your nephew about this, you just go back and say you talked to a financial advisor, and the financial advisor said it was strongly discouraged you to do that because of any of your income needs.
And by the way, I feel bad for you. So here's $1,500, $2,000.
If you want to do that, or don't do that,
or don't do it.
Very good.
All right.
Okay,
and by the
thank
way,
you so much.
By the way, Mary, you need to actually go and figure out where your money is and what it's doing.
Yeah.
And if you're a few years away from a retirement, when you retired from the state of California, did you take were you pension eligible, or was it a deferred vested pension?
Sure. No. I was pension eligible, but I have worked in New York State, lovely New York State.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, appreciate the call.
Well, unfortunately, that is all the time we have in this program. It's been great having you with us. This has been Allworth Financial's Money Matters with Scott Hansen and Pat McClain.
This program has been brought to you by Allworth Financial, a registered investment advisory firm. Any ideas presented during this program are not intended to provide specific financial advice. You should consult your own financial advisor, tax consultant, or estate planning attorney to conduct your own due diligence.